Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. That came out on Monday, okay? So on Monday's Aaron Torres pod, we really recorded Sunday night, but we talked about the fact that it was the end of kind of this college basketball recruiting cycle. This past weekend, it was Peach Jam, it was Adidas, the event that I was at, and I'll be transparent. The number one conversation that at the event that I had with coaches and people in basketball was what the heck is going on with NIL and what the heck is going on with revshare and what does it mean for the future of college basketball? So remember, we now live in a revshare world. What does that mean? What it means is that now, instead of boosters and collectives paying players, every school now has $20.5 million to spend on whatever they want, pay their athletes, okay? Once you get past the $20.5 million, then players can still sign NIL deals, but those are the ones that have to be approved. Those are the ones that have to go through a clearinghouse. Those are the ones that you have to make sure get approved, basically, for lack of a better term. So you can spend the $20.5 million however you want. Every school can spend up to $20 million, but after that, you have to prove it's real NIL. Deals are getting denied. And I think the big question, just in the bigger picture, is anyone actually going to stick to the $20.5 million, right? Because we know that, good college basketball rosters this year, this past cycle, were costing $8, $10, $12, $15 million. North Carolina, we know, paid $14 million for their basketball roster, and football rosters ballooned up to $30 and $40 million this year. But you're supposed to stick to $20.5 million. And I think what's interesting about that number is that I think we all kind of thought that basically everybody was going to be kind of operating under the same kind of principles, right? You have $20.5 million to spend. Virtually every school that has major college football, so basically the Power 4, SEC, Big 10, Big 12, ACC, going to spend probably about 75 to 80% on football. That comes out to about 15, 16 million a year. Probably about 15 to 20% on basketball, so 2.5, 3 million. And then whatever's left over goes to women's basketball, goes to baseball, whatever. That was the assumption anyway. About 75% for football, about 15% for basketball, on and on. At least that was the assumption until Tuesday, or until Monday, really. That was because Matt Norlander from CBS, he was at Peach Jam, and he did kind of a big just conversation about where college sports are, whatever. But there certainly was an interesting part of his article where he said Kentucky is not going to be paying the 15% or so of their rev share to basketball, but instead closer to 45%. Producer Matt, you can put up the quote from the article. This is, and it has to do with the Big East, some of the non-football schools being able to spend more than everybody else. But Matt's article said the consternation stems from most SEC teams operating below $3 million in revenue sharing for the upcoming year, according to a variety of sources. One expected exception is basketball-crazed Kentucky, which is believed to be at 45% rev share of its $20.5 million cap for 2025-2026. There was talk of all SEC programs agreeing to an equal rev share cap, but similar to the Big East, if Kentucky wants to put more emphasis on its basketball program and sacrifice for less than the football side, more so than the likes of Alabama, Auburn, or Tennessee, that's Kentucky's prerogative, okay? And so for people who don't totally follow that, basically, Kentucky, let me even backtrack. The SEC, when we got this rev share, when we got this dollar amount of 20.5, Greg Sankey kind of came in and kind of tried to push for everybody to spend equally in every sport, create as much balance in theory as you can. So everyone's got to spend this much in football, this much in men's basketball, whatever. It was well reported and well known at the time that Kentucky was the number one school and maybe even the only school that pushed back and said, wait a second now, we're happy to spend the 20.5, but why do we have to spend it all on football? Why can't, if we want to go higher in basketball, why can't we? And so Norlander reported on Monday that Kentucky is going to spend 45% of its rev share money on basketball. I'm just doing some quick back of the envelope math. That's about 3 times as much as basically any other power conference school that I'm aware of. But it would also, of course, put the football team at a significant disadvantage, assuming, of course, that everybody sticks to the $20.5 million. This is where it gets interesting. Matt Jones. If you follow Kentucky sports, you know who Matt Jones is. Kentucky Sports Radio. Frankly, he used to be my boss. I did some stuff for KSR back in the day. Upon seeing this report, Matt Jones on Monday night put out a tweet that refuted Norlander's report, saying, quote, I am told that the report today about basketball getting significantly more NIL at Kentucky than other schools is not true to the degree stated. I am told the football folks feel the revshare level for UK football is very competitive with the rest of the SEC. So essentially, we have two very differing thoughts on what revshare is going to look like at Kentucky. Matt Norlander, CBS, says they're going to spend upwards of 45%, and they're going to be not even close in basketball in a positive way, but not even close in a negative way in football. Matt Jones says football is going to be basically the same as everybody else. Kentucky basketball might get a little bit more, but not the same. To which I say, and I think this is where it gets interesting, which report should we believe? That Kentucky is going to spend way more or Kentucky is going to spend the same? So I have a thought on this. I think I know what happened. And let me start by saying this. I know both Matt Norlander and Matt Jones. Okay, this is not a criticism of either of them. I don't think either of them is purposefully being deceptive. In other words, I don't think Matt Norlander pulled that number out of the air. And I don't think Matt Jones is just completely making something up to refute that Matt Norlander report. But what I would say is, if I had to believe one over the other, I'm just going to say it. And if it gets me in trouble, and if it gets me banned from, well, I don't know where it would get me banned from, but I got to say this. I do kind of think the CBS Sports Matt Norlander article probably is a little bit closer to the truth. Not a criticism of Matt Jones, but I think all you got to do is think about it from a few different perspectives. Think about it from Norlander's perspective. Okay, first of all, Norlander's a great reporter. Not to say Matt Jones isn't. Norlander's a great reporter, okay? But there is, beyond him being a good reporter or not, one, he's just not going to throw something out there. Two, there's no benefit to him. There's no benefit to him just throwing that out there willy-nilly with no truth behind it. Like, you could say, well, Kentucky's the biggest college basketball program in America. There are way cooler stories to make up about Kentucky basketball if you want to go viral than that one. So I don't think he's just making it up out of thin air. Now, maybe some of it is other schools trying to say, oh, Kentucky's got more than us, it's not fair, blah, 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 blah. But I just don't think he would make that up. Now, I don't think Matt Jones would make his up either, but I think we also agree that, like, look, it benefits Matt and it benefits everyone at Kentucky if that news is not out there, because while it probably does help the perception of Kentucky basketball, I think in some ways it actually hurts, because now it's like, oh, we have so much money to spend. Obviously, recruits are going to ask for more. Obviously, now publicly the pressure goes up. But you know what it really does? It really hurts Kentucky football. And that's, to me, where I think the Matt Jones tweet, it feels to me like it's a little bit of a code red, press the button. We got to get ahead of this story, because while it's positive for basketball, it's completely negative for football. And I do wonder if somebody in the Kentucky athletic department, maybe it was Mitch Barnhart, the AD, maybe it was somebody else. I do wonder if they saw that report and they were like, oh, crap, we cannot have that out there. Now, what somebody would say, why wouldn't you want that out there? Well, the answer is pretty simple. It is because there's not, let me put it this way. There is a not 0% chance that Kentucky is going to have to hire a football coach in the next 6 months, okay? I'm not saying it's going to happen. I know what Mark Stoops' situation is. I know his buyout is insane, okay? But we know that Mark Stoops is coming off the most disappointing year of his entire regime, basically since year 3 or so when he got it going. So we know Mark Stoops is kind of in it this year. He's coming off a disappointing year. They were picked to finish 15th in the preseason poll last week by the media. This is obviously a 2, 3, 4 year downward, not 4, but 2, 3 year downward trajectory for Kentucky football. And I know that everyone's going to point to Mark Stoops' buyout, say he's not being fired after this year. I'm just sitting here saying, like, if Mark Stoops really bottoms out again, if he goes 1-7 in SEC play, if they go 3-9 or 4-8, I don't think he's back in 2026. I just don't. And you could say, well, you know, the money, the this, the that. One, Kentucky will figure out a way to either buy him out or come to a settlement. But even from the Mark Stoops perspective, are you going to want to stay? I don't care how much money you're making. If you're miserable and you know nobody wants you there and you know everybody needs a fresh start, you think you're going to stay? I don't care how much money you're making. You know what's a great analogy of this? John Calipari. John Calipari, after that Oakland game, it was clear he could not stay there. It was clear there was nothing he could do to win back, and I think justifiably win back the fan base. It was time for him to move on. He finds a landing spot at Kentucky. And if Mark Stoops goes 3-9 or 4-8 again this year, like he did last year, I don't think he's back. So to bring it back to the reports, of course, Kentucky doesn't want it out there that they might be spending 3x on basketball and significantly less on football, because they might have to hire a football coach in December or January or maybe even November. And what they can't have is going into a coaching search, coaches saying, well, wait a second now, I'm going to be getting way less money than Josh Heupel and way less money than Kalen DeBoer and way less money than Billy Napier at Florida. And you want me to compete with and beat those guys and Shane Beamer and whoever, Brian Kelly? No coach that has options is going to take the job if they're at a disadvantage. And I'll tell you this, talking to people in college sports right now, the number one thing that is going to go into all of these negotiations whenever you hire a new football or basketball coach is what percentage of the rev share am I going to get at the new job? And if you are getting significantly less than everybody else, there's no chance you're taking that job. Just as a hypothetical, I think every Kentucky fan listening or watching or whatever, John Summerall, the Tulane coach, right? That's the guy that everybody wants to replace Mark Stoops one day. If John Summerall knows that he is going to be at a significant disadvantage as everybody else, and that basically he has no chance of competing for the players that he needs to beat Tennessee and Florida and whoever, you think he's taking that job? I don't. To quote Kevin McAllister in Home Alone, I don't think so. He's not. And so to me, that's where the second report came out. And it's to me why I think Kentucky had to run a code red really hard. Now, it's worth noting a couple of things because I think this is important. One, it is worth noting that, and I think this is important, is that rev share kind of dollar amounts, at least as things currently are, they can change year to year. So in theory, you could give basketball 45% next year. And then if you have to hire a new football coach, and if rev share is part of the conversation, you could bump it up for the following year. So if John Summerall's available, you could say, look, man, we're going to give you a long-term contract. This year, you're kind of behind the eight ball, but year 2, 3, 4, 5, it's written into your contract that you get this percentage. So I'm not saying that even if the Norlander report is 100% accurate, that it means that it's going to stay that way forever, okay? But what I do think it speaks to is a very interesting conversation that we have to have about the state of college sports, where things are and where things are going, not only at Kentucky, but I think this is a metaphor for pretty much all of college sports. And what is that metaphor? It is that as we get deeper into this rev share era, as we get deeper into the pay for play era, whatever it looks like, whether it's coming straight from schools, boosters are involved, whatever, I just don't know that everybody can be great at every sport the way that in some cases they once were, right? And it was funny. I remember having this conversation about 2.5, 3 weeks ago with my buddy Ryan Fowler, who hosts Tide 100.9 in Tuscaloosa. And basically, if you follow Alabama, you've heard the stories. Alabama doesn't have these never-ending revenue streams of a Texas, of an Ohio State, of whatever. And so Ryan was saying, like, one, we struggled to raise NIL for football. But two, the sport that actually suffered was basketball, because basketball was not spending anywhere near, or at least at the time, now I don't know if it changed when LeBaron Philon came back, whatever, but they weren't spending anywhere near what Kentucky spent, what Arkansas spent, what some of these other schools spent on their basketball rosters, because they just don't have the rich alumni base that's just going to write blank checks. You know, Texas and Texas A&M spent a ton of money on their basketball rosters because they had new coaches this year. So Ryan was like, listen, I love Nate Oates. I hope he's here forever, but I don't know that we can be great in basketball and football simultaneously in this new era. And so I think those are decisions that all of these schools are going to have to make. It's not just Kentucky. It's not just Alabama. I was thinking about this, like Mississippi State, right? They're great at baseball. They've been great at baseball historically. Are they gonna maybe say, you know what, basketball just isn't as important here? We got to focus on putting the best baseball roster on the field that we can, LSU is a baseball school. Alabama's a softball school. Does some of the money go there? The only point I'm trying to make is I think every school is going to have to make tough decisions. And I don't know that everyone can be great at everything if, again, we stick to this $20.5 million cap. Now, the one thing I will say that is positive, and I was thinking about this, and we'll wrap on this, is that we talked Tyron Stokes the other day, #1 high school player in America. By the way, make sure you're following our Torres on UK Twitter page, Torres on UK. But I bring it up because I'll say this. If Kentucky does have $9 million to spend on its roster for next year, they're probably getting Tyron Stokes, right? Because we talked about out of Peach Jam, it felt like all the intel and all the buzz was that Tyron Stokes was going to be a Kentucky, or not that he's going to be, that Kentucky was the favorite coming out of Peach Jam. And a lot of people say, oh, they're not the favorite. Louisville's the favorite, whatever. I only bring it up. If Louisville's spending $15 million on football and $2.5 million on basketball, and Kentucky's spending $9 million on basketball, then all of a sudden, pick the player. AJ DeBonsa got a ton of money from BYU. Nate Amen a ton of money from Tennessee. We thought the days of giving freshmen all that money are over. Kentucky's got $9 million to spend. They're probably getting Tyron Stokes. So, we'll see what happens with this. But I think there's probably some truth to the fact that basketball is getting significantly more than most SEC schools. I think Mitch Barnhart has to run some PR stuff here to make sure that, hey, man, like I might have a football coach to hire and I can't have them thinking that they're operating at with 33% less money than everybody else. And then finally, I just think this is the new world of college sports where I don't know if everyone can be great at every sport at every time.